All right, my name is Michael. I work for this company called Oatly. Uh, if you guys don't know what Oatly is, we make like oat milk and other products from Oatly, a plant-based company. So when OnBrand kind of asked me to speak, I was just kind of like, okay, what do you want me to talk about? And they're just like, well, why don't you just tell us the Oatly story? And I thought, okay, we can do that. And we have this presentation that we take new employees through, and it's quite long. It's about 100 slides, so I'll go pretty quickly. But I thought that was probably the best way to kind of communicate or to show you guys how we think and how we work and why we do kind of the things that we do. So congratulations. You all just got a job at Oatly. So now what? The first thing we tell everyone is just to unlearn everything you know. And this basically came about from everybody telling us that we can't do stuff. Like when we do Instagram, we started writing captions that were like this long, and everyone's like, Instagram is a visual medium. No one's going to read all that. And we thought, well, people might read it if they thought it was interesting, and it's become quite beloved. Then we started doing out of home and started writing these really long headlines in out of home. And then all the media agencies came back and said, look, you can't put more than 5 words on an out of home board because no one's going to read it. And again, we were like, well, we think people will read it if it's interesting, and people started doing that. So, kind of, if there is a playbook for Oatly, it's just basically flipping conventions on its head, which is quite a simple strategy to follow. But it's something that we do all the time. So when people come to us, they come with their baggage from marketing agencies, companies, whatever, and it usually takes about 6 months for us to beat all of that out of them. So again, we make something called oat milk, some other cool oat milk products as well. However, we don't try to act like a company. We're not interested in building a brand. We don't have a marketing department, and there'll be a bit more on that later. We have no interest in target group analysis or brand awareness studies or making a dorky marketing matrix. So what we are is a voice. And I'm just going to run through some headlines that we've done. And when we talk about this voice, I always talk about us as we when you go to a party and there's always some dude that walks in and he's always like the most interesting person, but nobody knows why. Kind of like Pete Davidson, how did he end up being Pete Davidson? So that's kind of what we strive to be. As you can see, we don't really talk about our products much. We ran this headline all over Manhattan, so everywhere you turned, it just said, oh, it's you again. So essentially, we're a voice that helps people eat healthier without recklessly taxing the planet's resources. And because our focus has never been about selling a lot of products, as you could see from those outdoor boards, we end up selling a lot of products. Who knew? Like Pete Davidson. So if we rewind a bit, Oatly was actually, I think, founded in the 1990s by a bunch of food scientists. And it was only back in 2012 when they hired a guy named Tony Peterson, the current CEO, that this whole rebrand kind of happened. But back then, this is what Oatly looked like. As you can imagine, what a food product from a bunch of scientists and engineers would look like. I think the chocolate one is quite disturbing. Actually, I'm not really sure what's happening there. And this is what our company culture was like. The beautiful PowerPoint template with the wavy gradient yellow on the bottom. So anyway, so then this guy came in, and he talked to his friend John Schoolcraft, who's the kind of the global creative chief officer guy. And then together they kind of embarked on this mission of change, basically turning Oatly from a scientific company into a lifestyle brand. And what was funny was like when one of the first things that we changed was the packaging. And I don't know if you've seen the packaging, but maybe you have. It looks a bit homemade. And when it was presented to the company like 10 years ago, there were tears. People were horrified. All the scientists and engineers felt that we were disrespecting their work and just making light of everything. And Tony was just like, well, thanks for your feedback, but we're going to run it anyway. And I think everyone knows kind of what happened afterwards. It was just massive, massive growth. So, so now that the inmates were kind of running the asylum, we just started doing different things. And I'll show you just some of the earlier work that we did. So that's Tony. He's the CEO. And we did these early spots with him, and we didn't give him a script. And we knew that would annoy him. And he's really funny when he gets angry. So that's the whole point of this.
Ja, men ni kan inte göra en snygg film istället, eller en rolig film eller någonting. Varför ska ni sätta mig framför en flaggstång?
Men Tony, om vi gör en rolig film.
Ja.
Ja, folk tror inte på reklamfilmer längre. De tror på att du står där och är som dig själv.
Jo, men då får ni ge mig ett manus där jag kan säga någonting bra.
Men du vill ju ha någon som spelar, eller vill du vara ärligt och rakt och säga vad du tycker?
Jo, men det kan jag vara. Jag kan vara ärlig och rak. Och det här tror inte jag på.
Du får säga vad du vill. Säg vad du vill. Varför ska man dricka den där produkten liksom? Ja.
Då kan jag säga så loggorna syns.
Men nu är det säljande igen, Tony.
Vi ska ju sälja. Jag har ju betalat.
Ja, vi ska ju sälja, men vi ska göra den på en icke-säljande sätt.
Ja.
Till exempel. Ja, perfekt. Och sen den. Så. Nu blir det lite mer nonchalant. Perfekt.
This next one is my favorite. It takes quite a dark turn.
Jag vet inte vad man skulle tänka egentligen. Idéerna är dåliga. Jag är dålig. Nej, jag förstår inte. Kan man inte prata om något viktigare? Liksom att vi går till jobbet varje dag, vi gör någonting bra för världen och att vi gör saker som är hälsosamma och bra för miljön. Kan man inte liksom få fram det på ett annat sätt än att filma mig? Jag har inte sett en film där en vd är med som blivit bra. Det är skräckslagen, helt ärligt. Och barnen. De är hemma och gråter.
So, I mean, hopefully you can see from these that, we started to think differently about how we wanted our brand to appear. And, we didn't care about talking about the product. We didn't care about talking about any USPs or anything like that. We just felt that we had to be interesting and engaging in a way. And what actually helps us tremendously is the fact that we are a science-based company. And there's this mountain of evidence and research that goes into everything that we do. And when people meet us through here, they kind of like, oh, they're this funny little quirky brand. And then they tend to get to know us a bit better, and they dig a little bit deeper, and then when they see the whole iceberg underneath the water, then they start to love us. So we do actually have a strategy, and that is this. And that's the only strategy that we have. And then we started doing stuff like this, which kind of got the attention of the dairy industry. And we know it's not biologically correct. We know that the milk doesn't come out from that end. But they weren't so interested in that. We started saying stuff like this. It's like milk, but made for humans. And that ended up pissing off the Swedish milk lobby. And this was about 7 or 8 years ago. And they filed a lawsuit against that previous line and some other things that we were saying that they weren't too happy about. Which, when they did this, when this landed on John's table, he started just kind of laughing and running around the office because this was like the best thing that could have happened. So essentially, we took the entire lawsuit and published it online. We hired illustrators to go into the courtrooms and drawing pictures and put that on our Instagram. And it basically turned into a huge David versus Goliath situation, and the entire community kind of came and backed us up against the big milk lobby. We actually ended up losing the lawsuit, so we can't use that line. It's like milk but made for humans in Sweden. But we weren't not allowed to use it outside of Sweden. So we just basically went on a roadshow, kind of provoking the milk industry in different countries. This is in Amsterdam. So kind of daring them to do the same thing. It was a bit of a it was a considered bet because I think they all saw what happened in Sweden. So it would have not been the smartest thing to do the same. And so we were able to just kind of run riot with this in different places. This is actually in London, and we made these illegal cookies because we printed the line on these cookies, and that is actually the Swedish embassy in London. And so when the delegates came out, we wrote on a napkin that they had to finish the cookie in its entirety before going back into the embassy, because technically that's Swedish territory, and that would have invoked the lawsuit. So, always playing on the edge. And then, I don't know, maybe some of you have seen our Super Bowl ad. I won't play the whole thing, but.
It's like milk, made for humans. It's like milk.
Yeah, okay, that's enough. But essentially, the point of the point of that ad was, well, we wanted to make the most hated Super Bowl commercial ever, and we kind of succeeded, but also succeeded in getting a lot of talk value. Everyone was saying either they loved it or hated it, which was great. So all this had been going on for multiple years, which led to this massive growth. I mean, it was like kind of tech company kind of growth, and you can't scale factories like you can software. And we ended up IPOing 2 years ago. So I thought we would take a commercial break. These are products that that you can only find in the U.S., and I promised a colleague of mine in the U.S. that I would run this here, so.
Well, what's the verdict?
It's delicious.
What if I told you that that's not real mayonnaise?
Real mayonnaise.
Nope.
What is it? What does it consist of?
There's no real mayonnaise in that entire bar. Kind of hard to believe, right?
The hell is this thing?
So what is our secret sauce? And it's really about removing everything that gets in the way of creating great work. And the creative department, we're all ex kind of ad agency people, and we've all been kind of scarred by marketing directors who destroyed our work or didn't buy the work that we wanted. So when John Schoolcraft started, he asked Tony one simple question: can I kill the marketing department? And Tony said, sure. So at Oatly, we have no marketing director. We don't have any savvy CMOs. Creatives are involved in every single part of the business. Marketing, even though I said we don't have marketing. Sales, innovation, product development, supply, finance, but maybe not finance. So essentially, we brief ourselves, we do the creative work, then we approve our own work. And I think this is quite unique and basically only comes about from the relationship that we have with Tony. Because he trusts us to really know what we're doing with the brand. He doesn't interfere. But with that trust, it's like that whole Spider-Man thing, with great power comes great responsibility. When things go well, that's great, but if they don't go well, that's on us as well. So even though it feels like everything is irreverent or kind of flippant, which it is, everything has really actually been thought through quite deeply. So it also means that we don't have any of this stuff, brand awareness studies, target group analysis surveys, the whole kind of back and forth that most organizations have when it comes to try to push work through, which just gets beaten and beaten and beaten into submission. So this allows us to move way faster with much more dynamic flexibility. And in some ways, I think it makes us pretty impossible to copy. Because basically, we don't resemble an FMCG company. And because of that, we're allowed to be ourselves everywhere. So I'm going to show you kind of what we mean by that and just show you some more work that, a good filter for us is if a marketing director would approve it, then we shouldn't run it. So this is stuff that most marketing directors wouldn't approve. So this is a package design where we thought it would be funny to do it upside down. For no other reason than it gets attention and is funny. But then we also do stuff like this, which is something that came out of the creative department, because we felt that, isn't it a good idea for consumers to know the climate footprint of their products? And we just started doing that, and we pushed it through the organization. And again, this only comes about from the fact that the creative department is kind of embedded in all the aspects of the company. So because if you think about the logistics involved here of the sourcing and the transportation and putting that number on the packaging, things change, and someone could easily say this is going to be way too difficult to do, but we thought it was the right thing to do. Everyone else thought it was the right thing to do, so we pushed it through. However, a number like that is kind of meaningless if no one else knows what to compare that with. So we went out and challenged the food industry to show us their numbers as well with this campaign. And a few came on board, but Then we took it a step further in Germany, where we actually petitioned the Bundestag to make it a law to put the climate label on food products. And again, I think it comes back to, like, I know nothing about politics or how legislation works, much less German legislation. But we just figured it out. We just called up some professors and said, this is what we want to do. How do we do this? And it was just kind of that persistence of pushing through. And there's like a naivete to how we work, because if we knew how difficult this was to do, we wouldn't have done it. But because we didn't know, and you marry like this courageousness with this stupidity, and you actually start doing some interesting things. But then we turn around and do completely stupid stuff, like this is on the inside of the I think our yogurt or something like that, where we have an old bike and say, hey, does somebody want our new bike? And I won't read this for you, but at the bottom it says, if you don't need a bike, I also have a set of barbells, a donut machine, a pair of ice skates, and 342 issues of National Geographic from the early 1990s, all with your name pre-printed on the envelope that I will send them in. And if you do that, you have to go through with it. And so we sent out all those National Geographic magazines. And once you do that, and someone receives a package in the mail from a oat drink company with an old National Geographic magazine from the 70s, you kind of make a fan for life. In Sweden, Arla, this was about 2 or 3 years ago, before all dairy companies started doing their own kind of plant-based, started making these ads, kind of making fun of hipster milk, basically making fun of us, calling it brolk and pjolk, and they were saying, like, only milk tastes like milk. So then we just kind of flipped that, and we bought the trademarks for brolk and pjolk, and put them out in supermarkets. This next thing is completely weird and random. Do you know those big gigapixel photographs that are just incredibly dense and rich, and you can, like, zoom in and zoom out? So we had a guy make that for us in Barcelona, but we planted Oatly ads, like, all over the city, and I'll just kind of, and we thought, well, what if people find them? And, like, the chances of people finding it are relatively zero. But we did it anyway. I can show you kind of what that was like. I think only 3 of them have been found. Success. And then about a couple years ago, someone from, I think, the sales team thought, well, why don't we do, like, FAQ, the frequently asked questions, and we thought, well, that's kind of interesting, but isn't it more interesting to do infrequently asked questions? So stuff like, will trying oat milk make me like your billboards at all? Or do I need a different mouth to drink oat milk? Again, it makes sense and it doesn't make sense at the same time. And something else we did is that there's a town in the UK called Oatly, O-T-L-E-Y. So we brought Oatly to Oatly, and there was a bit of confusion.
What can you find? Oatly. Oatly.
Just up the road. Just up the road. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Oatly, the oat drink?
I've had people tell me about it.
Can you describe what it is?
I don't know if it's in between a beer and a lager, is it?
Then we also did something stupid in New Zealand where we, again, talking about long copy on out-of-home boards, we actually wrote it too long that it needed to fit on 2 boards. So we bought 2 placements, and they're actually nowhere close to each other. So the first one just ends mid-sentence, and then you'll walk and there'll be like this weird fragment of a sentence somewhere else. Here's something else we did. Okay, so let me get this straight. You did a bus stop ad promoting our oat drink, then made a boat sign about the bus stop ad, then did a social media post about the boat sign, then did a billboard about the social media post, then that famous organ player woman posted a video in front of the billboard, so you made a mobile truck ad about her video, then made a newspaper ad about the truck, and then made a mural about that newspaper ad.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so is that it?
Well, no, because this is the internal meeting about the mural that shows the newspaper ad, that shows the mobile truck, that shows that Oregon woman video in front of the billboard, that shows the social media posts, that shows the boat sign, that shows the bus stop ad promoting the oat drink.
Right. So what about Instagram? Yeah, just a lot of nonsensical, stupid stuff, but people find it entertaining. And then last year, we spent a ton of money on doing a puppet show. So I spent about 8 months of my life doing like a 5-part 5-episode puppet show called The New Norman Al Show to, talk about Oatly plant-based as the new normal. I won't show you the ads. You can take a look on our site. But these are some teasers that we ran.
No, man. Hey. I'm going plant-based. Yo, what?
This is another one.
We aren't real, Al.
So I'm not real.
You're a puppet, mate, remember? We aren't real.
I'm not real.
We aren't
not real. So I'm not real.
You're real to me, Al.
I don't really know why we went horror with that one, but it was just kind of funny. But we often talk about being consistently inconsistent. So hopefully you can see from this work that that is the case. And even though everything kind of looks different and feels different, I think the thread through it is just this voice. It is that personality that kind of shines through. So why doesn't everyone kind of work like this? I think the answers are quite obvious. It's too risky. It's too complicated. It's too time-consuming. Too little focus on sales and way too inconsistent to track. But is our system a success? Well, if you look at this slide from 3 years ago, we were number 2 in branding. Maybe I should update this. It's now 2022, but there's been so much kind of talked about the company and the brand. We get tons of love. I don't know if you can see that. It says, "Please don't sit on this bench. We are trying to use it to sell our oat milk." and she's obliging very politely and standing and waiting for the bus. But we get a lot of hatred. This was an email that says, "This is also disappointing. When I was client side, though responsible for the brief, I wouldn't have signed off this output. So do you think it's really the fault of the creatives, or could it be their clients?" We actually get a lot of mail like that. But again, it's just, it's all about the noise. Everyone has an opinion about what we're doing. I thought we'd just wrap it up with just some random stuff to confuse us even more. Everything that is unnecessary is totally necessary. We're all about using our anti-authoritarian nature for good, challenging industry norms to drive societal change. Because every sold carton is a win for the planet. And then I'll just leave you with a campaign that we ran in the UK 2 years ago. It's a spot called, the campaign is called Help Dad, which was all about targeting teenagers and helping their dads switch to plant-based. We got a lot of hatred for this campaign.
Hey, how's things?
Yeah, not too bad.
Things still crazy at home?
Afraid so, yeah. He has it in his tea. It's coffee, muesli. The other day I caught him drinking from the carton.
How old is he now?
55.
Oh, God knows, that's a difficult age.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Thank you, Michael. I think just lost the mic, but you can use my voice. Yeah, well, stay here because I'm sure we might have some questions. If anybody has some questions for Michael, we can ask them now.
Hi, thanks, Michael. That was great. I've actually seen all of those ads, and they were funny again. So obviously, your creative team is very creative. So what is your creative process to come up with these crazy ideas? And do you ever run out of ideas, and what do you do in that case?
See, I mean, that's the thing. It's like when everyone was kind of asking us if you just go work for one client, as opposed to working on several clients, won't that get boring? And my experience was actually the opposite kind of happened with Oatly. That normally when you're creative at an agency, you're handed a brief that's quite narrow, and you paint the hallways in any way you can. But the first day at Oatly, one of the commercial directors just asked me, "Well, what are we gonna do in the UK?" I have no idea. So you're given so many buttons and levers to press, whether it's with public policy, like with the Bundestag campaign, product development, innovation. The landscape is massive, and there isn't a shortage of kind of ideas to kind of go through there. Well, at least I've been there for 5 years, and it's the well hasn't run quite dry yet.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Mike. Thanks for the fascinating presentation. You mentioned that you have your creatives embedded into the company and into all these departments. How is that done exactly? Are they just asked to kind of shadow other people or given daily reports on what's happening, or are they actually getting their hands dirty as well?
We're actually in the meetings and we're actually part of the teams that are developing like the products and stuff. So I'll sit in the meetings with the GMs of Germany and the UK, talking with our product innovation teams, and together we'll kind of figure out, well, what are some of the best products that are going to resonate with the German market. So yeah, we're actually embedded. It's not a shadowing. Oftentimes it's the people within the creative departments that are kind of spearheading kind of initiatives across sustainability, product innovation, etc. It's weird, yeah.
Thank you for the presentation, Michael. I'm just thinking, because it's really fascinating process and everything, but personally I love your ice cream, but you can't get it in Denmark. And so I'm just thinking, how do you discover new markets and how to expand your products into new markets? And if you don't believe in data science, or how you come across that?
I think to be honest, the situation with Denmark is probably like a Swedes versus Danes kind of thing. There's a little bit of that going on. Also, the size of the market. It's 5 million people. On the other hand, Copenhagen is a European capital, so I think we should be more in Denmark. I can put it that way. But I don't work with the Nordics. I work outside of the Nordics and in Europe in general. But in terms of like expansion, yeah, I think it's basically kind of following where we can build organizations. So we have quite a strong organization in Germany, and then we're building out from that. So that'll encapsulate Eastern Europe. But the plan is to be everywhere. I think what's holding us back is essentially we can't build factories fast enough.
Sorry. Thank you, Michael. That was brilliant. Love your branding. I was just wondering if there's anything that is off limits. Maybe, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of creative differences, but do you ever have situations where there's a conflict within the team as to, and like where do you kind of come up with that final decision as to whether you run it or not?
Yeah. Yeah, there's massive discussion around all of these things, and there is no clear line on anything. I think it is just kind of a discussion of involving the people that are going to be kind of most affected by it. But the short answer is no. There aren't really any boundaries. But like, I think for me, it's like if we're not always at that edge, then we lose our edge. So we're always kind of pushing things, and we have more lawyers, I think, than any food company, and we use them a lot, and they're quite busy. But we're always at that edge, and I've been in so many meetings, crisis meetings with lawyers. But if we're not doing those things, then I don't think we're pushing hard enough.
Thank you.
Thanks, Michael. That was great. Maybe just to follow up on the last question. Was there a fear when you went public that you would have to tone down and be less disruptive or provocative?
Yes, there was, and I think that was the biggest challenge. Like, how do we retain that edge? For me, it wasn't so much about the IPO. For me, it was being big. When we ran into that kerfuffle with the Swedish dairy industry, we were the small kind of local player, but now we're a global company, and how can we be seen as that disruptive force? And my kind of reaction to that was, well, suddenly we had a bunch of big players kind of approaching us, like McDonald's and Burger King and, you know, huge sports teams, and like we would never do that in the past because it didn't feel right. But now the thinking is more, well, why wouldn't we do that? We have bigger stature, we have a bigger voice, we can play in bigger platforms and create more change. So why not exploit that? The trick is to do that in a messed up way, and which isn't entirely possible. But to your point, yeah, with the IPO, there are certain things that we can and cannot say, but it doesn't limit us in any way brand-wise. I think we can find ways around it.
Thanks. So this is a follow-up on a follow-up, I guess. So Oatly obviously grows and becoming more and more of a dominating player in this segment, right? And so now you're on the big side, right? You're the large company in this world, and you last year I think you actually sued a small oat milk farmer in UK, right, and lost that lawsuit. How do you manage that kind of new situation that you're in, marketing-wise, coming from the small outsider to becoming the more dominant player, actually suing other small players?
Yeah. Well, I think it actually kind of goes back to kind of what we were talking about before. It is, being big doesn't necessarily have to mean being kind of conventional and traditional. And I think that's kind of where we've kind of landed with that. We're actually kind of exploring some big global partnerships, but the trick is to do it in a way that feels fresh, that feels kind of irreverent, and that can certainly be done.
So a follow-up on a follow-up on a follow-up. So it's not a secret that you got backed by Blackstone, for example, right? So as an anarchistic brand, I would call you, wouldn't that compromise your whole identity a little bit to be backed by such a big venture capital fund?
The way we looked at that, and again, that was something that was done after, you know, days and days, if not weeks of discussion. If your mission is to change the food system and to change, if your mission is to change the food system, you have to change all the other pieces around it. And we could have gone with a small kind of green fund, but if you go with the biggest players, they're the ones that have the influence on the market. And by going with the biggest, baddest guy on the block, we felt that we could create the most impact with that partner, because all the other actors in the financial industry are looking at what, you know, those guys are doing. So if they're going plant-based, then and they see that as a great investment, then others will follow suit. So that was the thinking on that, and there's been a lot written about that in the press, as you can imagine.
Well, I have one for you, Michael. I was just thinking about this as you're talking. Most companies sort of lead with a digital strategy, right? And maybe they come up with a story and then spend 70-80% of the time thinking about how they're going to distribute channels it's going to turn up on. Where you're centering the creative and the content, those other channels, those digital channels, are really easy to measure and report on, and we do it daily and everything. How are you judging the performance of the content? Is it a long run down the line, or is there an earlier noise that you're looking for?
I think that for the most part, we have been measuring our campaigns based on the discussion that is created by it, and it is by no means a hard measure. I mean, you look at how many articles or what's written about you in the press, what journalists are writing about you, what the discussion is on the social media platforms, and that has basically been kind of our measure. I mean, when we do campaigns, I mean, essentially, we're dealing with what could possibly be the biggest issue facing humanity, in generations. And so everything we do is a PR campaign. Everything is about PR. Everything is about discussion. Everything is about raising the volume on the noise around it. And the thought is we provoke people who will be very vocal in hating us, and then you have a community that is very vocal in supporting us, and you use those forces to just turn up the volume, and then people on the edges start to hear about this, start to think for themselves, and start to think, well, maybe there is something to this oat drink, and step on board. But as we're getting bigger, like as you can see, a lot of the stuff we've done is out of home. 5 years ago, we only had money to do a campaign in Shoreditch, in London. Now, how do you scale that to the whole of the UK, if not the whole of Europe? You can't possibly buy, enough boards out of home to do that. So there has been a migration into the digital sphere.
Thank you very much, Michael Lee.